It was a quiet afternoon. The sun hung low over the dusty road, casting a golden glow on the little town. Inside a small roadside diner, a woman in her late 40s wiped down the counter for the third time that day. She didn't mind the quiet. She liked hearing the humming of the fridge, the soft clinking of spoons in coffee cups, and the occasional laughter from the two old men who played checkers by the window every morning. That day, though, something felt different. The bell above. The door rang, and she looked up. A man walked in, tall, rough-looking, covered in leather and dust. His jacket had patches on it, and the most noticeable one said, "Hell's Angels." He wasn't smiling. His eyes looked tired and his shoulders heavy, like he'd been on the road for days. She didn't say anything right away. She just gave him a small nod and pointed to the booth by the corner. He walked over slowly, sat down, and placed his helmet on the seat next to him. When she brought over a glass of water, she finally spoke. "You hungry?" He nodded. "Anything warm?" She brought him a plate of fried eggs, toast, and coffee without saying much else. He quietly thanked her as he started eating. The bell rang again. Two local police officers walked in, looking serious. They spotted the man and came straight to his table. "ID," one of them said without a greeting. The biker looked up, surprised but calm. "Did I do something?" "ID, now," the officer repeated. The woman at the counter watched closely. She had seen many travelers pass through, and not all were treated like this. The biker pulled out his wallet, showing them a license. "You staying in town?" The other officer asked, eyeing the patches on his jacket. "Just passing through." "You're with them?" the first officer asked, pointing at the Hell's Angels patch. The man didn't answer. "Step outside with us," the second officer said, reaching toward his shoulder. That's when the woman stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady but not loud. "He's eating." Both officers turned to her. "This doesn't concern you, ma'am," one of them said. "It does if you're harassing my customer," she replied. "Is he under arrest?" The officer frowned. "He's part of a known gang." She crossed her arms. "Did he break a law here?" Silence. "He's been quiet. Ordered food. Paid for it. I don't see a crime." The biker looked down at his plate, unsure what to say. One of the officers stepped closer. "You sure you want to get involved?" She didn't flinch. "I run this place. I don't like seeing people treated unfairly. Now either charge him or let him finish his eggs." The tension was thick. For a few seconds, no one moved. The biker kept his head down, trying not to make things worse. Finally, after a quiet exchange of looks, the officer stepped back. "Don't cause trouble," one of them said to the man. Then both turned and walked out. The door closed behind them with a loud click. Silence returned. The woman walked over and gently refilled the man's coffee. "Thanks," he said, his voice lower than before. She gave him a small smile. People forget that patches don't always tell the whole story. He looked up at her. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," she replied, "but someone had to." The rest of the meal went by quietly. He finished his food, left a big tip, and nodded his thanks again before walking out with his helmet under his arm. She watched him ride off down the road, his bike roaring into the distance until it faded into silence again. The diner felt a little emptier than before. Later that evening, one of her regulars came in and whispered, "You're brave for what you did today." She shrugged. "I didn't do much." But as she stood behind the counter, wiping it down again, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. The road had brought someone to her diner that day, a stranger in need of a little decency, and she had simply offered it. What she didn't know was that her small act of kindness would not be forgotten. And the next day, her quiet little diner would become anything but quiet. The next morning started like any other. The sky was pale blue, with soft clouds drifting slowly above the sleepy town. The woman opened her diner at 7 a.m., just like She always did. She flipped the closed sign to open, brewed fresh coffee, and set out her famous homemade pies in the glass display. But something was off. The two old men didn't show up for their usual game of checkers. The high school coach who usually picked up coffee on his morning run didn't stop by. Even the mailman skipped his usual smile and waved through the window. She noticed it, of course. The silence was louder than usual. She kept busy anyway, cleaning, restocking, checking supplies, but the hours moved slowly. By noon, she had only served one customer, a trucker who barely spoke a word. She couldn't help but wonder if the people in town had heard what happened yesterday. And she was right. Word had spread. Small towns had a way of turning whispers into thunder. Some folks didn't like that she stood up for a biker, especially one from a group they believed was dangerous. They didn't care that the man had done nothing wrong. They only saw the patch on his jacket. Still, she didn't regret a thing. She stood by the counter, arms folded, staring out the front window with a heavy heart. She wasn't angry, just disappointed. Her diner had always been a place where anyone could sit, eat, and be treated with respect. That wasn't supposed to change. Around 2 p.m., just as she was thinking of closing early, she heard it. A low rumble, faint at first, like distant thunder rolling across the road. She turned toward the sound. It was getting louder. Her heart skipped. She stepped outside. The sound grew deeper, stronger, closer. Then she saw them, one bike, then another, and another. Within seconds, dozens of motorcycles turned the corner onto Main Street. They rode in formation, slowly and respectfully, engines growling but never roaring. Behind the first wave came more and more. Her eyes widened. She couldn't believe it. Motorcycles lined the street as far as she could see. The townspeople peeked through curtains. Some came out of stores to watch. A few pulled out phones to record. The bikes parked along the curb, and then the riders removed their helmets, men and women, all shapes and sizes. Some had long beards, others clean-shaven. Tattoos covered many arms, and their jackets all bore the same patch, Hell's Angels. At the front of the group stood the same man from yesterday. He looked different, cleaner, more relaxed. But his eyes were still sharp. He walked toward the diner while the others stood silently behind him. The woman opened the door slowly. He stopped in front of her. "We came to say thank you," he said quietly. She blinked, unsure what to say. "Stood up for me when no one else did," he continued. "Not just me, but for the idea that people deserve kindness. We don't forget that kind of thing." She looked past him. At least 200 bikers were now standing by their bikes, watching respectfully. None of them made noise. None of them threatened anyone. They just stood there, waiting. The man pulled something from his pocket. It was a folded note and a small patch. Not the Hell's Angels patch, but a custom one with a simple message. "Respect earned." He handed it to her. "This is from all of us." She opened the note. It read, "You fed a stranger and defended him with courage. We eat today to honor you." Family on the road. Tears filled her eyes, but she wiped them quickly. "You all hungry?" she asked, her voice catching just a bit. A few chuckles broke out. "We brought our own food too," the man said. "But we want to eat at your place, all of us, even if we have to wait all day." She looked at her little diner. There were barely 10 tables. "Well," she said, smiling, "I guess I better turn up the grill." The crowd erupted in claps and laughs, not loud or wild, but joyful and warm. The bikers formed a loose line, helping one another get settled. Some offered to help carry in supplies, others gave her money in advance. Not tips, donations, they said, for standing up when it mattered. The street that was empty that morning was now filled with life. People from the town began walking over, slowly, curious. A few looked unsure. Some looked nervous, but then something happened. One biker bought coffee for an old man standing on the sidewalk. Another helped a kid take a photo on his bike. A group of riders picked up trash from the corner. Slowly, the walls began to fall. The woman inside the diner worked like never before, but her heart was full. She wasn't alone anymore. Her small act had reached further than she ever imagined. And this was only the beginning. The diner had never seen a day like this. The kitchen was alive with noise-clattering pans, sizzling oil, and the non-stop hissing of the coffee machine. The woman moved faster than she ever had, her apron stained with flour and grease. Her hands were tired, her legs aching, but her face carried a glow she hadn't felt in years. Outside, the parking lot and sidewalks were lined with motorcycles. The bikers weren't shouting or causing trouble. They weren't loud or wild. They waited in line. They took turns. They laughed softly among themselves. Some leaned on their bikes, others sat on curbs, sipping coffee and chatting with townspeople at one table. A biker was showing a young boy how his engine worked. At another, a woman in leather helped an elderly lady cross the street. It was not what anyone expected, not even the woman who had defended one of them just a day ago. Every so often, one of the bikers stepped inside and offered help. "Can I wash dishes? Want me to wipe tables? You need more coffee beans? We'll buy some." She smiled at every offer, though she refused most of them. "You're my guests," she said. "Let me feed you first." But she did let them carry out plates, refill waters, and stack chairs. And they did it with care. Soon, the regular townspeople began coming back, too, not out of hunger, but out of curiosity. One man who had stopped visiting after hearing rumors about the bikers said quietly to the woman, "I didn't know they were like this." She gave him a look. Sometimes you just have to see people with your own eyes, not through someone else's story. By mid-afternoon, the diner was running low on supplies. The woman looked at her nearly empty fridge and sighed. She wasn't worried about making more money. She had already made more in one day than she usually did in a week. But she didn't want to turn anyone away. She stepped outside and told the crowd, "I'm running low, but I'll keep going as long as I can." One of the bikers raised his hand. "What do you need?" She shrugged. "Eggs, bread, milk, vegetables, if there's any left at the store." The man turned to the group and called out, "Grocery run." Within minutes, several riders peeled off down the street. 20 minutes later, they were back with bags of food from 3 different towns nearby. The woman laughed out loud for the first time that day. "You're all something else." Another rider smiled. "You stood for one of us. Now all of us stand for you." Later that afternoon, a man with a camera approached her. He was from a local newspaper. "Do you mind if I write about this?" he asked. It's kind of amazing." She hesitated for a second. "Only if you write the truth." He nodded. "The truth is, you changed this town today." She didn't answer. She wasn't sure she believed that yet, but she did know one thing: something real was happening. The biker from yesterday, the one she stood up for, walked in again near sunset. He had taken off his jacket, revealing a simple t-shirt with a small patch that read, "Peace over pride." He sat at the counter, just like he had the first time, and waited patiently while she prepared his meal. When she placed the plate in front of him, he looked up. "Back where we started," he said. She smiled. "Only now you brought some company," he chuckled. "You know, when you stepped between me and those officers, I thought you were just being polite." She shook her head. "That wasn't about being polite. That was about being right." He nodded. "It meant more than you know." For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then he added softly, "A lot of us ... We've been judged our whole lives. Some earned it, some didn't, but most of us never get the benefit of the doubt." She looked at him. "You don't have to tell me about being judged." He understood right away. They came from different worlds, but they both knew how heavy judgment could feel, and how rare kindness really was. Outside, the sky was turning orange. Some bikers had already left. Others planned to stay in town overnight. A few locals were now sitting beside bikers, sharing jokes, stories, and warm pie. The little diner, which had started the day nearly empty, was now filled with laughter, clinking forks, and new friendships. No one had expected this. Not the town, not the biker, not even the woman behind the counter. But when respect met kindness, something powerful happened, and though the sun was setting, the day felt far from over. The next morning felt different in the whole town. For the first time in a long while, people weren't talking about weather, politics, or gas prices. They were talking about the diner, the bikers, and the woman who had stood her ground with quiet strength. At the diner, the woman arrived earlier than usual. She unlocked the door before sunrise, her heart still full from yesterday. She had barely slept, not because she was worried, but because she couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened, the kindness, the respect, the change. In the air. She turned on the lights, brewed fresh coffee, and set out new pies. Her fridge had been restocked with the help of those bikers, and her tip jar still overflowed with crumpled bills and thank you notes. But outside her door, something was shifting. Not everyone in the town was happy. At the edge of Main Street, 2 police cars sat parked with their lights off. Their presence was quiet but heavy. Across the street, a group of business owners stood in front of their shops, arms crossed, watching. Some still believed the worst about the bikers. Others felt uncomfortable seeing so many of them around. It didn't matter that nothing bad had happened. People held on to old fears like they were bricks, and once you carry them for long enough, it's hard to put them down. Around mid-morning, the diner filled up again. Some bikers came back for breakfast. A few had slept nearby in motels or parked their bikes at the edge of town. But now, something new was happening. Locals started joining them more than before. A group of teenagers sat with a couple of bikers and asked about their tattoos. An old farmer shared biscuits with a rider who had been in the army. A school teacher asked one woman about her bike's engine, and they ended up laughing over shared memories of long road trips. Still, the tension outside lingered. Just before noon, the town's mayor came in. He didn't come alone. He walked with one of the officers from the day before, and they both wore tight expressions. The room grew quiet as they approached the counter. Woman greeted them calmly, like she would any customer. "Morning," she said. The mayor nodded. "Can we talk?" She led them to a side booth. They didn't order anything. The officer leaned forward. "Look, no one's saying you've done anything wrong, but we've had calls. People are worried. They think this gathering might bring trouble." The woman tilted her head. "What kind of trouble have you seen?" The officer didn't answer. The mayor tried to sound gentler. "We just want to make sure things stay peaceful." "They have been," she replied, steady and sure. "These folks have caused less trouble than a football crowd." The officer added, "We know some of these groups have a history." She gave a small nod. "Yes, and so does this town. We're not perfect either." They didn't expect that answer. The mayor shifted. "So ... what are you suggesting?" She looked around at the people laughing, eating, and sharing stories across tables. "I'm not suggesting anything, I'm living it. This is what respect looks like. It's messy, it's different, but it's real." Silence followed. Then one of the bikers approached. It was the same man from that first day. He didn't interrupt. He simply waited for her to notice. "Everything okay?" he asked. She nodded. The mayor stood up. "You the one who started all this?" The biker gave a calm smile. "No, sir." "She did." The mayor looked between the two of them. He gave a small sigh. "All right, we'll keep things calm, but please, if anything goes sideways, call us." The woman nodded. "You'll be the first to know." As they walked out, the officer paused at the door, then glanced back. For a second, he seemed to soften. Then he left without saying another word. The biker looked at the woman. "You didn't have to defend us again." "I didn't," she said. "I defended the truth." Later that day, the biker group gathered in the parking lot. They had something to say. Before many of them rode out. The man stood on one of the picnic benches and raised his hand. "We're heading out soon," he called, "but before we go, we wanted to thank this town, and especially this diner." Everyone turned toward the woman standing at the doorway. He continued, "This isn't just about being bikers or not being bikers. This is about seeing people for who they are, not just what they wear. We'll carry this experience with us, and we'll share it wherever we ride." A cheer followed, not loud, not wild, but deep and sincere. Then one by one, the riders came forward. Some hugged the woman. Some shook her hand. Others handed her small patches, thank you cards, or simply nodded with emotion in their eyes. By the time the sun started going down, the bikes began to roll away, one group after another. Their engines rumbled like a goodbye song that echoed through the streets. And though the parking lot grew empty again, her heart had never felt so full. She watched the last rider disappear into the distance. And then she whispered to herself, "Kindness always finds its way home." It had been 2 weeks since the bikers rolled out of town, but their presence still lingered in the air, in the hearts of the people, and most of all, inside the little diner. The woman's life had changed. Before all of this, her diner had then just a small roadside stop, mostly visited by locals and passing truckers. She never complained. She loved the quiet, the regular faces, the smell of fresh coffee, and the stories shared at worn-out tables. But now everything was different. People from nearby towns began visiting, curious about the diner where the bikers went. Journalists reached out. A few bloggers wrote about her story, calling her the woman who chose respect. Some strangers even sent her handwritten letters from across the country, thanking her for reminding the world that kindness still existed. One letter simply said, "You reminded me not to judge." I needed that. Tourists now came in every day. Some just wanted coffee. Others wanted a photo with her. A few only came to sit at the booth where the biker first sat, quietly reflecting on how one small act can change everything. But she didn't let it change who she was. She kept wearing her same old apron. She still opened at 7 a.m. sharp. She still wiped down the counter herself, even though she could now afford to hire extra help. She didn't want fame. She didn't need attention. All she wanted was to keep serving people the way she always had, fairly, kindly, and without judgment. One rainy afternoon, just as she was about to close early, the bell above the door rang. Single biker walked in. He was soaked from the rain but smiling wide. She recognized him right away. "You're late," she joked, handing him a towel. "I got lost," he said, laughing. "But I had to come back. Some of us were talking. We've decided your diner, it's part of our ride now. A regular stop." She raised an eyebrow. "So this is a permanent thing now?" He nodded. "Every year, same week. We're calling it homecoming. You gave us something we didn't know we needed." She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she smiled. "You better warn the grocery stores." A few weeks later, true to their word, the bikers returned. Not 200 this time, but close. They rode in peacefully, just like before. This time, the town didn't hide behind curtains or whisper. This time, the locals waved from porches, stepped out of shops, and offered water, handshakes, even hugs. What had once felt strange and scary now felt normal. The diner overflowed again. Not just with people, but with laughter, warmth, and something deeper. Respect. Later that night, as the crowd calmed and the plates were cleared, the woman stepped outside to take a breath. She looked at the stars above the quiet street. A few bikers were still chatting around their motorcycles, sipping coffee in the cool night air. One young man approached her quietly. He wasn't one of the original group. He looked nervous. "Hey," he said softly, I was one of the ones watching from my truck that first day." She turned to him. I saw what you did, he continued. How you stood up for someone you didn't know. I didn't say anything then. I just drove away. She waited for him to finish, but it stayed with me, he said. I kept thinking, would I have done the same? I'm not sure. But I wanted to thank you. You made me want to be better. She looked at him kindly. That's the whole point, isn't it? He nodded, smiled, then walked off quietly. She turned back to the sky, a soft breeze brushing against her cheeks. That night, before locking up, she looked around the empty diner. The chairs were stacked, the lights were dim. But in her heart, the room felt full of stories, full of people who had changed, and full of the belief that even in a divided world, something as simple as a warm plate, a kind word, and a moment of courage could ripple across lives in ways no one could predict. As she turned off the lights and stepped outside, she paused to look at the open sign one last time. Then she whispered to herself with a gentle smile, they came for a meal, but they left with more. And the road stayed quiet once again until next time.